Well, but most people don't want the government setting the price of milk and eggs and bread. Now, maybe you do, I don't know, but most people think that the government, that outright socialism doesn't work, that the government shouldn't set all these prices. And so my point is just, why would you want the government to set interest rates? And you're worried about usury, but I'm saying at the very worst, you know, you'd have usury, but you wouldn't have this boom-bust cycle. That if I'm right, it's the Federal Reserve that ultimately caused the housing boom, and now we're in this mess because of the mistakes of the Federal Reserve and other central banks.
But that is your opinion. You were suggesting that the Federal Reserve is responsible for the housing crisis. The Federal Reserve is saying that they are not.
Right.
That it is just greed, and as Mr. Greenspan suggested, that people just had a free-for-all without regulations.
Okay, but again, even there, that just goes to show that the Federal Reserve is not preventing the sort of shenanigans that you think it needs to exist to prevent.
But the point is, if the Federal Reserve is putting in the regulations, as they claim they are now doing, they would ward off another crisis. You are saying no Federal Reserve. No one should regulate this thing, which means that you can have a repeat of a housing crisis again. Yes?
You could, of course, in theory, but my point is, look, after Enron, remember Enron, that was in the early 2000s, and they brought in a whole new set of regulations to say, we got to prevent that. We make sure that never happens again. And then we had all this stuff going on Wall Street, and now we're going to have this new wave of, I mean, the Federal Reserve was founded in 1913. How long are you going to give it to get it right? That's what I'm saying. That they always, after a crisis, say, okay, we see the light, we're going to fix it, never again. And a few years later, it happens again. It's a different form. It's a different type of calamity, but they're never going to prevent those because the people on Wall Street figure out ways around the rules, and also they're the biggest contributors to some of these politicians. So I think it's naive to assume the government is going to really regulate all these rich people who are the ones putting them in office.
But in order to have order, that is why you have what we call the World Economic Order. In order to have an economic order, a proper order of things in the world, you do need regulations. Yes? And the G20 countries, they are about to put in place a new order, a new order for the financial system of the world. Yes?
That's what they're proposing to do, but again, by the same token...
But the world has to be well ordered, and the financial systems of the world must be well ordered. And somebody must do that, right?
I don't think so, not in the sense that you don't need somebody to make sure the right number of gallons of milk are produced, or you don't need someone to make sure the right number of shoes are produced. I mean, the whole appeal of socialism was this very idea that you don't want to have things left up to chance. Why don't we have the experts plan the economy and everything will be fair? But there were systematic reasons that that doesn't work, and that free competition in a market actually produces goods and services. Even though people are greedy, competition harnesses their greed. And so I think that's a more realistic approach than trusting government regulators to make sure no one breaks the rules.
I want to ask you a little side question here. What do you think about jurisdictions like the Bahamas, which caters to wealth clients? How do you feel about these kinds of jurisdictions?
Well, I understand why they do it, and that that's in their mind the way to make money. So my only comment, I guess, at this point would be just to be very careful, and I hope that your government and other, your planning board and so forth, they don't assume the U.S. is going to come back and keep sending those wealthy people here, because I think the U.S. is going to be a lot less wealthy the next few years.
Final question to you. Do you think the world needs an international monetary fund?
No, I don't.
No. You don't think that the IMF should be in existence to play a role in regulating the economic affairs of any country of the world?
No, I don't. I mean, I think if you look at historically the countries that the IMF goes in to so-called help, a lot of times they do more harm than good. They impose austerity budgets and so forth that I think ends up ruining countries.
I agree with that.
And when do you believe that the recession is going to get worse before it gets better?
I do, unfortunately. Do you want me, again, just all the policies they're doing are perpetuating the very things that caused the crisis in the first place. So I think 5 years from now, we're still going to be in this crisis mentality, and we're going to look back to today and think that this was relatively mild.
Now, you're an economist. You've been teaching economics, and you've written books. When are things going to get better?
When the governments reverse policies and central banks raise interest rates from, I mean, right now they're at 0 in the U.S. That doesn't even mean anything. What does it mean for the interest rate to be 0?
Well, thank you so very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate your being here, and I'm sure that your point of view is well understood. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Godfrey Ines.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the platform this evening, and good evening, everyone.